with JMU Hall of Famer and someone who knows a hell of a lot about taking it to the house.
Joyce breaks a tackle and goes in for a touchdown. Another spectacular run by Delvin Joyce.
Delvin Joyce brings his unique perspective to the podcast to break down all things he's seeing about JMU football, with a little help from EPA King Jack Fitzpatrick and Bennett Conlon.
Here he goes. He's going to try to beat the putter. He does. He's gone. And that is a touchdown.
Welcome into To the House.
Look at him turn back and forth. Oh, he broke his ankles. Now he's got an entourage. And he's got a touchdown.
Now, here's Delvin Joyce with Jack Fitzpatrick and Bennett Conlon.
What's going on, JMU Nation? It is Delvin Joyce, the People's Choice, welcoming you to another episode of To the House. I am joined by my guy, Jack Fitzpatrick, a.k.a. Jay Feezy, a.k.a. the EPA King. And Jack, I need you to come through with some EPA stats today because I need you to explain what I'm seeing on the field.
None of the EPA stats are good after what we saw on the field on Saturday. I'm still reeling from that performance.
BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything sports betting. Every stat, matchup, breakdown, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during games. With the largest catalog of odds on everything from football, MLB playoffs, NHL, NBA, to political props. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of our over 150 slots games. Head to the website today to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline, the game starts here.
Check out the JMU Sports News Podcast with Bennett and Jack. New episodes drop in the middle of every single week, previewing the upcoming week and recapping the previous week. It's all part of the JMU Sports News Network, your home for To the House and the JMU Sports News Podcast.
Yeah, that was a tough one, man. There were moments where my fan brain and my former football brain were kind of competing to try to figure out how I was going to explain this one. But I got to say, the one thing that I saw there, especially after the game, Jack, is I saw accountability. And what I love about accountability is that it breeds responsibility. And I don't mean responsibility, I mean responsibility, your ability to respond. And as I think about the preparation that this team is probably undergoing this week, they are mounting a response and hopefully trying to get back on track this week. So, Jack, are you excited to see the boys back in action this week?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a great game. I'm really excited to tune into the broadcast and watch how Southern Miss is treated by JMU.
Yes. I mean, the broadcast, spoiler alert, yours truly will be in the broadcast booth with Curt Dudley, making my ESPN Plus debut in Harrisonburg, which will be a lot of fun. I can't wait. Jack, I know you've done some color and some play-by-play. Any tips, any words of wisdom for me?
You got to prepare, but also don't feel tied to your notes. Let the game come to you. It's very much like playing the game, just without the pain and hurt and running into 300-pound men time and time again. You just kind of let the game come to you. You feel it out, and you'll kind of get into the flow.
Yeah. It's just talking football, right?
Yeah, you're just talking football. You're talking about what you're seeing on the field. It's pretty much this podcast, but instead of me, it's Curt, and you have a team of like 10 producers and directors and graphics people helping you out.
Love it, man. I need you behind the scenes. I need somebody to come do makeup, and I need you behind the scenes.
Makeup, you're asking a little bit too much for.
Coaching me up. Now, it's really cool, man. I had my good friend, who I think is the best color guy in the country for college football, my good friend Jesse Palmer, did a call with me this past week, coached me up a little bit, gave me some helpful tips. So looking forward to being in the booth. But let's go back before we can fast forward to Southern Miss. We obviously have to talk about this Georgia Southern game. It's pretty obvious that Statesboro, Georgia is not our friend. We have never won in Statesboro. And I didn't know that. I know that we had some history with Georgia Southern during the FCS years. And of course, we lost there in 2022, but I didn't know that it was a big goose egg in Statesboro. So I'm actually glad I did not make the trip. That was a last minute decision. My wife and I were like, nah, let's just kind of hang out at the house and watch it on TV. So glad I did not go down. But as you saw, Jack, it was an overall disappointing performance. Again, I felt at times that we had never actually gotten off the plane. And we did something that I think is really, really hard to do in football, to go +4 in turnover margin and actually lose the game. And if you remember, as we were talking, going back and forth doing the game on Saturday, what did I say? I said, hey, we've gotten 2 turnovers and 0 points. I'm logging off this group chat. I'll see you guys after the game. Because I knew at that point that it was going to be a long day. I mean, what were your thoughts early in the game as we got some momentum, we got turnovers, and then all of a sudden it just sort of fizzled out?
So coming into the game, I was in Bloomington, Indiana. I watched Curt Signetti and company take it to Nebraska with a mutual friend of ours, Tim.
That's
So
right.
we were out there. We both were cheering for Nebraska. We were already a little down in the dumps. We walked a mile from Memorial Stadium. I will say Indiana, fantastic atmosphere, wonderful campus.
Wow.
Really, Bloomington's a really cool place. But we're walking there and we're talking about the JMU game. Yeah, there's no way that we lose this game, right? I mean, it's Georgia Southern's a tough opponent, but their defense is bad. Yeah, and then, kind of going back and forth. This is going to be the, we're going to get that bad taste in Nebraska losing 56-7 out of our mouth. And we're going to watch. There's no way both our teams lose. We sit down at the sports bar and we watch it. And George Pettaway breaks off a 10-yard first down run on the very first play of the game. We were like, oh, let's go. Let's run it down their throat. Then like a weird snap issue, then another weird snap issue, then I think an incomplete pass, and then they're punting. But then they pick it off. And I'm not going to do the full play-by-play for the first couple of plays, because then they pick it off. Jacob Thomas has a great return. Max Lipinski, because Noe Ruelas didn't travel with the team, he bangs it off of the upright. Yeah. Okay, no points. It's fine.
By the way, the first interception was Bush on the tip ball.
Right. That's right. It was Emmanuel Bush on the tip ball.
Yeah.
Who puts it into good range. And then Jacob Dobbs with the fumble recovery on the very next drive.
Yeah.
No points. And I was sitting there and I was like, we're going to lose this game. We've just had 3 possessions and Georgia Southern scored first. This is going to be rough.
And we got the ball first. Yeah. So it was rough. Now I do have to ask, I mean, did you guys wear anything JMU in the Indiana stadium?
I wore my JMU home field shirt. You can actually find home field using our code, a description, and all that information's in the description below. But I was wearing my JMU Duke shirt, so I got some Indiana fans coming up to me and they're like, "Thanks, man. Thanks for your coach." And I was like,
SIG. Oh my god! I heard him on the Pat McAfee show. And he actually is showing a lot of personality these days. I mean, the guy was talking smack. I mean, he's like, yeah, we smacked UCLA and got on the plane and came home. It's like, where was that when you were at JMU, my guy?
Yeah.
But yeah, very, very cool to see them win and see them doing well. But for JMU, I think, one of the things that we have to do, I think a theme for our conversation as we talk about this game and this team going forward is that 2 things can be true. And I know we are in an environment where everybody wants to create this binary where it's either good or bad, right? We're in this political season. It's either red or blue. It's up or down. It's bad. It's good. But I want you to think about this team and the idea that 2 things can be true. So I think the first thing that can be true is that we have a very good team. But the other thing that's true is that we went down to Statesboro, Georgia, and we got beat by a team who was better on that day. Plain and simple, bro. They dominated us. We did not look good. They played well. We did not. We have a good team that went to Georgia and got beat. Now, the other thing that can be true is we have an incredibly explosive offense. And we've seen that in games like the second half of UNC Charlotte, the entire game at Chapel Hill, the Ball State game. But we also have an offense that sometimes just literally forgets how to play football and can not find any sort of rhythm, any sort of mechanics, any sort of development into any sort of semblance of that explosion that we thought we were going to see for the rest of the season. right? Two things can be true. Jack, I also think the other thing that is true is that we have a great defense. We have a great defense that gets takeaways. But the other thing that's true is that sometimes this defense struggles to get off the field, right? I mean, I think Georgia Southern had a 96-yard drive over 18 or 19 plays and held the ball for 10 minutes in this game, right? Here's another thing that can be true, Jack, right? Thanks for letting me cook, by the way. I know it's late tonight. We are in the studio late.
Cook it
I
up,
am
chef it up.
cooking. Yes.
Chef it up.
But the other thing that is true is that we have a great young quarterback, right? But the other part of that is that he still makes some mistakes and he's got some major areas for development. Two things can be true. And the last thing I will say is that as fans, what is true is that we can support this team as fans. But it's also true that we can be upset when we have a performance like we had on Saturday, and we can ask questions and be critical of the team and even the coaches when things don't go well. And I'll be the first person to tell you that Coach Bob Chesney has won way more football games than I ever have as a coach, because I don't coach, right? Dean Kennedy has called way more touchdown drives than I have. Lyle Hemphill has called way more defensive schemes than I ever could dream of, right? So again, it's not that we're being critical of them. It's that we are talking about the actual performance on the field. And I want to start with the offense for a second, because again, I said we have a very talented offense. We have a very talented play caller in Alonzo Barnett III, AB3. But I want to remind fans for a second that, this guy literally just completed his 7th full college football game. And I know everybody listening, including you, Jack, you got everything right in your first year of work, right? You never made a single mistake. You were perfect right out of the gates. I know that's what our expectation is for AB3, but I got to be honest, the guy is still learning. He's got a long way to go. He's shown signs that he can be the playmaker and the signal caller that we need him to be, but he's still got to sort of grow into that role, right? Now, I would say you either win or you learn. You don't lose. And I think this team, including Alonzo Barnett III, did a lot of learning on Saturday. So I guess, Jack, for you, as you think about that offensive performance, I know we talked about it a little bit. You're right. That first run went for 11 yards. We started cooking in the next 3 plays. We have issues with the snap and we punt the ball. So I guess your overall thoughts on the offense and just kind of how it just seems like, I think a word that a lot of people are using are Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde as we talk about this offense. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, the peaks are really high and the valleys for what we've seen right now are very low. These last 3 weeks, according to PFF, Alonzo Barnett has had his 3 lowest graded games, which as you're getting into kind of the meat of your schedule, that's not what you want to see for a younger quarterback. You'd expect him to get better each and every week. He hit his height against Ball State, and these next 3 games, it's gotten progressively worse. But with that being said, it is a young quarterback. It's a young offensive coordinator. I mean, this is Dean Kennedy was a GA for Dan Mullen with Kyle Pitts in Florida just a few years ago. He was working with Kyle Trask, who's only in his 3rd year in the NFL as a GA. He just had finished his first year as the prime offensive coordinator at Holy Cross last year. So not only do you have a quarterback in his 7th start, the logical side of my brain is, yeah, you have this really young quarterback who's a redshirt sophomore. You have this really young offensive coordinator who's still figuring it out. Like we all expect coaches to have the answers the second it happens. But I mean, there's a learning process to how to call a game, how to script a play. I mean, I imagine there's a part of Dean Kennedy where he had his script. He had his opening 15, 20 plays, and it was probably run, pass, pass, pass. And then probably for the next drive, it was maybe pass, run or something along those lines. And maybe a veteran 15-year play caller, offensive coordinator sees that first run. He goes, all right, we're going to keep doing that until they stop us. Where you may be a little bit of not an inexperienced, but a younger guy maybe wants to stick to his script a little bit more. I don't know. I'm like you, I'm not a coach. I don't know. But all of that's the long-winded way to say the logical side of my brain is saying they're young. they're gonna have these masterful moments against UNC, against Ball State, against Coastal, against the second half for Charlotte. But you're also gonna have these moments where you're pulling your hair out and you're going, why did you drop back a combined 103 times against ULM and Georgia Southern in your 2 conference losses when you were averaging 5 yards a pop per carry? And then
Wow.
you're just like, I like go, you know what I mean? But that's the
Yeah.
fan brain in me going like that.
I love when you're on To the House, by the way, because you're so much more positive and optimistic. And then when you get on JMU Sports News, you're like, yo, we suck. I love it. But you're exactly right. And in fairness to Coach Kennedy, I think he probably had some really good plays dialed up for that drive. The problem is we never got to see them because we had some sort of issue with the ball. Right. I mean, there was the next snap after Petaway broke that long run. I think, the center just snapped it. AB3 was lucky to even catch the ball. So we lose like 3 yards there. And then the very next play, he mishandles the snap. And then on another play on that drive, he also bobbles the snap. And so, I even texted you guys. I was like, that looks like that might be like a new package of balls where they still have like the waxy film on them. They're super hard. I've been in games where they break out some brand new balls that are not worked in. And man, it is a struggle to hold on to them because you can even see the Georgia Southern quarterback, JC French, even had trouble hanging on to the ball as well a couple of times. So it was really weird, but again, looks like we settled in and got going a little bit. But, as I look at that game, one of the big struggles that we saw, and this is something that you just pointed out, you would expect this young quarterback to get better as the season goes along, right? And I think the challenge for a guy like AB3 is that, you know what? You start to put the film together. You start to put a resume together on film. And opposing defenses now are going to scheme against that film. So I think it is sort of like a peak and valley, right? It's Reddish Knob and then the Shenandoah Valley, if you will, to, kind of bring it back home a little bit. But it is, hey, this kid just went out and torched UNC. And then the very next game, he, went out and torched Ball State. And, the challenge is the things that he did well in those games and the things that he did poorly in those games, the upcoming opponents are scheming against those things. And one of the things that you saw is against Gardner-Webb, they put a recipe together. They brought pressure, and that was something that I feel like we handled well at Chapel Hill. But going forward, we have not handled pressure very well at all. I reached out to you earlier, Jack, to say, hey, what does PFF say about AB3 when he is throwing the ball with a clean pocket versus when he's throwing the ball under pressure? And what did you tell me?
He's not as good under pressure. He has a pretty precipitous drop in production when he's pressured.
Yeah, I mean, it was, and I'm going to try to find what you sent to me because I thought it was pretty eye-opening. And by the way, in fairness, I mean, obviously, I think all quarterbacks struggle when there's pressure. I mean, that is the absolute point of pressure. But if you look at his stats, he has completed when he is kept clean. And look at you. You got me, we're what, 9 episodes in, you got me spouting off PFF stats. Wow.
Welcome.
I can't believe this. But if you look at his stats, he has completed 63% of his passes when he's kept clean, right? And under pressure or blitzed, he's under 19% under pressure pass completions. Am I reading that right?
Yeah.
And then when blitzed at 43%, right? So, or I'm sorry, 46% completion percentage when he's blitzed. So if you look at his total yards, he's got maybe 700 yards when he's under pressure passing the ball. The majority of his yards come when he has been kept clean. And so again, there is something there that we have to figure out. And, from my observation, I see a lot of different things. I see some, breakdown and protection on the offensive line at times. I saw in this game several times where, we have running backs that went out into their routes and linebackers came free. But what looks like is happening, if a team is bringing 6, which Georgia Southern did a lot during this game, when they brought 6, It was almost like we couldn't even get the ball off. So much so that AB3 was sacked 6 times, which is a lot. Now, again, compare that with JC French. We sacked him twice, and I think both times, he kind of just gave up on the play and fell down. Like we didn't actually tackle the dude. So really, really troublesome stats from a sack standpoint. Are we leading the nation in sacks allowed?
That I have to confirm. I feel like there's probably a team out there that has just been eaten alive and like their quarterback is just a crash test dummy getting hit so much.
Yeah.
But it may be tops in the Sun Belt. I'll check that and get back to you. To kind of build off of what you're saying with Alonzo, the kind of crazy part is that he's been pressured 60 times this season. He is scrambled out of pressure, so not a designed run, and what PFF calls a scramble, just 8 times.
Yeah.
So 13% of the time when he's under pressure, he decides to keep it and run.
Just
Now,
13 times. 13%.
13%, just 8 times. That number for a guy who's seemingly, when he runs, it looks like he is one of the most athletic guys on the field. I wonder, I'm not in his head. I don't know what the coaching's being said. I don't know if he's being coached to try and find something and try to, hold onto the ball and go downfield when you're being blitzed. But his time to throw jumps up a full second. He holds the ball for 3.62 seconds when he's under pressure. That's a recipe for sacks. He has a pressure to sack ratio of 35%. Not a good, that's one of the highest in the nation. And on top of that, he's not running the ball when he's under pressure. He's trying to throw it. He's throwing it away or he's getting sacked.
Yeah, we got to get that guy some swagger back. We got to get that guy running the ball again.
Yeah.
Because, just reading the body language, and I love AB3. He did not look like he was really sort of fired up and like having fun. And, it's interesting. Some of the comments that Coach Chesney will make about AB3 is that, hey, I just want Alonzo to go out and be himself. I want him to go out and play loose and play fast. And on Saturday, it did not look like he was playing loose and playing fast. It looked like he was kind of tight. It looked like he was just, trying to find his swagger. And if you go back to UNC, if you go back to that game, right, where did he find his swagger? The very first play of the game, he keeps it on the zone read and runs for like 40, 50 yards. In that game, he's had several scrambles where there's nothing open. He feels pressure. And rather than throw it away or take a sack or hang onto the ball a little too long, he was 88 and out the gate, right? Think about that long touchdown run that he had in that game, and he gets in the end zone and he celebrates. And that's the Alonzo Barnett III that we thought we would see going forward, because it's not necessarily the designed run. Let's snap it to you as a wildcat and let you run up the A gap. That's not where I thought he would be dangerous. Where I thought he'd be dangerous is you bring 6 and you're in cover 0, and my man is going to feel the pressure in the pocket and take off running and take one to the house. And the more you put that on film, the less teams will be likely to bring 6 in a pass rush and run cover 0, because our receivers will just run your defenders off. So again, that's something that I think going forward will have to be a recipe for us to really get it going on offense. I was a little puzzled, though. It appeared that he had double spats on his ankles, and quarterbacks typically don't spat unless you're talking about like 98 Michael Vick, right? Because he knew he was going to run the ball 1,000 times in the game. But yeah, I was curious to see that he had double spats. I think someone asked him about that in the press conference. He said he's fine, but I wonder if there's something there that's lingering that's preventing him from actually running the ball.
Could be. And I got to ask a question to you here, because at this point in the season, we've seen, Tyshawn Wyatt hasn't played. Sounds like he may just redshirt this season, might get in for a few games, but will likely redshirt. You've lost Iowa Day. He also is planning, it seems, to return next year and use a redshirt, a medical hardship waiver for this season. You've also lost Riley Robel, your star swing guard tackle, redshirt freshman. You've lost Carter Sweezy. The injuries are starting to pile up a little bit. And at this point in the season, it feels like no one is truly 100%. You've taken a lot of hits over the weeks. How do you manage it as a player now moving forward when every hit maybe feels a little worse? It takes a little bit longer to get up. How do you manage that moving forward?
Yeah, you go into the season knowing that you're never going to be 100%. Like, I think everybody understands that. Everybody knows that. And so you manage it as best you can. You get as much treatment as you can. You get in the cold tub. You do everything you can do to be as good as you can be on Saturday. And I think what's positive for this team is that we've got a game coming up this week that on paper, and I'm going to say on paper because we've had some games on paper where we should have won, but on paper, this one looks like it should be one that we should be able to handle pretty easily. Now, I hope I don't have to eat those words, right? But we should be okay in this game, and we're back at the Mullet, so we're going to have some good vibes. It's homecoming, and then we get the bye. And you know what we're going to hear, Jack? This bye comes when?
At a perfect time.
It's going to be and I really believe that this bye will come at a perfect time because now we get the bye, we come back, we got Georgia State at home at the Mullet, right? So we got 3 weeks in a row where we don't have to travel. We got a bye week. We're going to get some guys healthy because to your point, I think some of the pass protection woes that we are having right now are a result of some of these newer guys who have largely rotated in and out during the season. I mean, got to give credit to Chesney and team for doing that because we got some guys who have experience. The challenge is they were twos for a reason, right? And so really have to do a better job of keeping these guys on the field. And hopefully after the bye week, we can do that.
Delvin, I got to find a coach that says that doesn't say the bye comes at a perfect time. I'm going to be on a hunt to find a coach that, when asked, "How do you feel about this bye?" says it comes at a horrible time.
Yeah, he's going to be like, "Yo, this bye sucks. We were cooking,
Yeah.
and now we got to sit at home for a weekend and watch football." Right? But yeah, that would be amazing. But you know, if you look at those first 6 drives that we had, and I screenshotted this while I was watching the game, or I took a picture of it on the screen. Our first 6 drives here. You ready?
No, but
4
I'm ready.
plays, 9 yards, punt. The next drive, 4 plays, -6 yards, missed field goal. So that's after the Bush interception, which was an amazing interception, by the way. I mean, that guy showed a ton of athleticism. Next drive, 3 plays, 4 yards, punt. Next drive, 8 plays, 22 yards. That was after their touchdown. So we did pick up 2 first downs on that drive. So we ran 8 plays. We picked up 22 yards, punt. Next drive, 3 plays, 6 yards, punt. Next drive, 3 plays, -6 yards, punt. I mean, I don't even want to do that math, but we held the ball for less than 10 minutes on 6 of those drives somehow. And the best we did was a missed field goal. That was brutal. We had 39 total yards.
Yeah, that's not good.
Not good. And again, we have to, again, what I heard though in the press conferences, right? I love when we record on Monday because we get some of these sound bites coming into this. What I heard though was accountability. I mean, I heard Coach Bob Chesney say after the game, it falls on me, right? And again, when you have accountability, you can have responsibility. Now, if we talk about the defense somewhat, you know, I think from a special team standpoint, first off, I think Ryan Hansen did a great job. I mean, he pinned Georgia Southern deep. We forced them to a 3-and-out, and we got the ball back in great position at the 43-yard line. But then we had a pre-snap penalty, false start. We missed Yamir Knight on a deep route, which he was wide open. It was a perfect route scheme. And this is one of those places where, you know, earlier in the season, we heard things like we're a block away. We're a missed assignment away from breaking a big play. That was one of those where, you know, we're just like one little touch pass away from breaking off a big run or a big pass. And now the score is 7-7 and we're back in it. Right. So It's never as good as it seems, Jack, and it's never as bad as it seems. And as I was watching the game back, I mean, I got to tell you, it felt like in the moment, my fan brain was saying, wow, Georgia Southern is dominating us. I watched it back today with my football brain, not my fan brain, my former football player brain. That game was a lot closer than it looked. We're a block away, missed assignment away, missed broken tackle away from being right back in that game. So I don't know if you saw it that way, or if you saw, as you watched the game back, if you saw opportunities where you were like, man, if we just do this, we're right back in it.
Something I really focused in on is the pre-snap penalties again, where that just felt like you were shooting yourself in the foot time and time again. They had 5 penalties for 25 yards whistled on the offense. One of them you can kind of throw out as a 4th and 1 delay of game on Ryan Hansen. You assume you just kind of take that, maybe give yourself a little bit more of a buffer. But other than that, it was a false start on 2nd and 10, which then made it 2nd and 15. You had an illegal formation on 3rd and 3. You picked up 8 yards on the play. You would have kept that drive going. Instead, you lose 5 yards, makes it 3rd and 8. You don't pick up the first down. False start on 1st and 10. I mean, you're putting yourself behind the 8 ball. You're kind of screwed before it even starts. And then a false start on 1st and 15. So right after you get that hit with that false start on 1st and 10, you go 1st and 15. Oh, and then a false start on the other side of this line of scrimmage. So it makes it 1st and 20. And just like that, your drive's dead before it even starts. That was what I kind of focused in on. And I agree. Like, even with all of that, JMU had a chance late. They score that touchdown in the beginning of the 4th quarter. Dollison catches it. You're right back into it. You're down 2. Jacob Thomas gets the interception, and then you can't do anything with it. And then you give it back to him. And then your defense can't get a stop because they're probably gassed by that point because they've seen so many plays. Because you laid out the first 6 drives of the game. That first half, they were on the field probably for 20 minutes. And you're gassed, and now you can't get that stop. So now you get the ball back with like 6 minutes left, back and forth. And this, if this happens, then that happens. And that's really what this game felt like. There were opportunities there, and they just failed to execute. Georgia Southern didn't fail to execute. Georgia Southern did exactly what they needed to do, took advantage of what they had, and they won the game by 2 scores.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, Georgia Southern had a game plan coming in. They executed the game plan to perfection. And I think a lot of things broke their way, whereas a lot of those things did not break our way. Now, again, I thought we had some breaks. I mean, the Emmanuel Bush tip, I mean, that interception, you do not expect that guy to make that catch. I was at the spring game. I don't know if you were at the spring. Were you at the spring game this year?
I was not, no.
Well, they did this exercise where they punted the ball to some of the offensive and defensive linemen. I want to say that Emmanuel Bush was one of those defensive linemen who was catching punts during the spring game. And I think he took one to the house, like he ran it all the way back. And when you're sitting in the stands, you're like, why are they doing this? This doesn't make any sense. But then when you see that guy make that kind of play, you're like, oh, well, maybe, having defensive linemen catch punts at the spring game or in spring practice actually does make a difference. So we did get some breaks. The other break that I thought we got on defense, I don't think that Jacob Dobbs recovered that fumble.
I don't either.
Play. Yeah, no, I thought that was going to be an easy reversal.
Did they even review that?
They reviewed it and still said that he recovered it on the field of play, and it was obvious that he was still bobbling the ball as he was out of bounds. So again, we had that one that broke our way. So we got some breaks, but it just seemed like we couldn't get over the hump. We couldn't get out of our way. And to your point on that long drive, we had the pre-snap penalty issues on offense. We had some penalties on defense that really cost us on that long drive that they had, right? So they got the ball, and I think this was really the backbreaker. It's 7-0 at this point. We punt the ball. We pin them inside their 5-yard line. There's over 13 minutes on the clock in the half. And they proceed to go 96 yards on 19 plays and score a touchdown to make it 14-0. That was the backbreaker. But on that drive, if you remember, Jack, we got them into a 3rd and throw situation, a 3rd and 8, and we jumped off sides. We lined up in the neutral zone. And now that put them in a 3rd and 3 situation. And now they just ran the ball and picked up the first down. So we gave them an opportunity to stay on the field. And we had 2 offsides penalties on that long drive that cost us 5 yards each.
They had, let's say, 4 3rd and throws. So they had a 3rd and 7 early in that game, went for 17 yards. They got it. They had a 3rd and 9 in the second quarter. It was an 11-yard catch. You get the first down. There was a 3rd and 14 on that long drive that they had. 3rd and 14, they got a 15-yard pass, touchdown. Then they had a 3rd and 10 pass for 12 yards in the third quarter, early in the third quarter in that first half. That would have been a quick 3 and out to begin the second half. They get 12-yard gain. They get it.
Yeah. Listen, everybody wanted to say that Georgia Southern had a quarterback controversy coming into this game. And you know, I got a lot of things wrong about what I expected to see in this game. But one of the things that I got right is that I said J.C. French has been effective this season for Georgia Southern. I know Dexter Williams came in, lit it up against Marshall. The guy had an epic comeback, did exactly what his team needed him to do. He will go down in history for that performance in that 6 minutes of that game. But J.C. French is the guy. I mean, the guy, if you have watched that team perform this year, J.C. French has done to other teams exactly what he did to us. We were only able to sack him twice. He has amazing pocket presence. We couldn't get him on the ground. He did what we are asking AB3 to do, which is you feel pressure, scramble and pick up 7 or 8 yards. Keep these drives alive. And that's what he did. He was so effective at that. And, you know, we consistently saw that on film, and he consistently did it against us. And so, again, the other part that was surprising for me is that our defense got gashed on some long runs. I mean, that first touchdown run is like a 29-yarder, and it seemed like we had great pursuit angles. You know, we could have made the tackle, and somehow the guy is just like in the house. He takes it to the house somehow. I didn't get it. I was like, we were there. Make the tackle. Somebody make the tackle. But anyway, it was just weird to see our defense get gashed for some of these long runs. Jacob Dobbs, though, absolute monster, had 17 tackles in the game. I don't know how you have 17 tackles. That's insane. But just played lights out, I think, on defense.
That was a lot of tackles.
I mean, is there a PFF grade for a guy with 17 tackles? What is it, like 100%?
Let me pull up what his grade was.
Does he get like a sticker for that? Like what? I mean, 17 tackles is out of control.
Jacob Dobbs finished the game with the 3rd best PFF grade on the team, with a 77.3, at an 83.4 grade in run defense, a 76.2 grade in tackling.
Interesting. Okay.
Which is very above average.
Yeah, that's insane. I mean, listen, I was so excited. I mean, in watching that game and just some of the ebbs and flows in the third quarter, right? DJ Barksdale makes that amazing play, right? Which, you know, on film, we're like, man, that is an amazing play. If you watch that game back, they ran that play earlier in the game on that long drive. And DJ Barksdale did the exact same thing, except J.C. French saw him that time and didn't throw the quick screen and threw the ball away. But DJ Barksdale has done his obviously his film study, because he knew exactly what the lineup was. He knew exactly what to do on that play. And for him to get that pick 6, I thought that was going to be a turning point for the team. I thought that would energize us. In fact, I saw people getting hype, and I was like, all right, let's go. And then we kick the ball off and they go right back down the field and score on us 28-7, just like that.
Yeah.
Right. So, anyway, I just, you know, again, I think the challenge is that this is a pretty good Georgia Southern football team. I really believe that. I think that they had their sort of Gardner Webb moment last week against Marshall. And Marshall's a pretty good team, and they just didn't perform well and then somehow pulled it out. I do think this is a pretty good Georgia Southern team. I mean, I want you to think about their 2 losses this year are to Ole Miss and Boise State, like 2 top 15 teams, right? Ole Miss is still in the top 15, I guess.
I think so. I think they're 8.
Yeah, they were like 6 when they played Georgia Southern, I think. So again, 2 losses to 2 top 15 teams. So this is no slouch of a program. I do think that, as I've said before, this is a any given Saturday type of league. And so there is a possibility that they could trip up and lose 3 games. And you know, they've got Old Dominion coming up. Is it Thursday night?
I think so. My boys.
Yeah, they play ODU, the most underrated 3-4 team in the country right now. We said they were the most underrated 1-4 team a couple of weeks ago, and now they've peeled off 2 straight. Again, a win over Jordan McLeod, who some people still you know, want on this roster. But if you look at Jordan McLeod's stats again in that game, he had kind of a game where, you know, doesn't go so well. Throws 2 interceptions, 1 touchdown, not a great passing completion percentage, and they only score 14 points. Kind of look like our game, except AB3 doesn't really turn the ball over from an interception standpoint. So again, just a I think that Old Dominion team is a dangerous team. Georgia Southern's got a pretty tough schedule, I want to say, coming up. I mean, there are potentially 3 losses on that schedule.
There are at ODU, at South Alabama. Then they got a bye week, and then they're going to be playing Troy at home. That's a dub. At Coastal, who just fired their quarterbacks coach and offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
Which was kind of interesting to see at this point in the season. So at Coastal, and then home against App State to finish out the year. So
which could go either way.
Yeah. So you got ODU and we'll say ODU is a question mark. South Alabama at South Alabama. I'll say that's a question mark. Of your remaining 5 games, you have 4 question marks on that schedule.
Totally. So again, the Dukes are not out of it yet. I mean, at this point, we're 5-2. We could easily, I won't say easily, but there is a scenario where we get our swagger back, we get our mojo back. And I'm going to say we got to get it back on offense, because if we can turn some of those turnovers into points, you know, the defense still held this team to 28 points. If we hit our average in this game, 39, we still win the game, right? So we got to get points on offense. And if we can hit our stride, I mean, there's a scenario where we finish this season 10-2. Georgia Southern slips up, loses 3. We're still in the running for that Sun Belt East championship, right? So I think that has got to be the goal.
I'm a defensive apologist, and I think the defense was fantastic in that game, and kind of near the end of it, they were just kind of getting a little tired. And if the offense steps up their game, the defense will get better as well. Rising tide raises all boats. It's going to be tough, though. It is a tough final 3 weeks of the season for JMU. They got to win out, and it's looking difficult to win out here.
Yeah. So, I mean, who do we have? And obviously the team can't look ahead, but we're fans. We can. Ahead. Yeah, we could totally look ahead.
So you got Southern Miss for homecoming.
Yep.
Then a bye week. Comes at a perfect time, I've heard. Then home against Georgia State. At ODU coming off of a bye.
That's a tough one. That's going to be a tough one.
At App State, and that App State's coming off of a bye, and it seems that it's going to be in Boone.
Really? Okay. I was thinking neutral field, but if that's the first game back in Boone since Hurricane Helene, that might be like an emotionally charged kind of stadium.
Yeah.
That might be even tougher now.
And then they finish out the year home against Marshall.
Yeah. I'm going to call it all dubs.
All
10-2, baby. 10-2.
I
Dukes get back on track starting this week. We got Southern Miss coming in. I think the last thing I want to say, man, as you look at that game, I love that the team competed and fought until the end, right? Like I didn't see any quit. I didn't see any give up. I know that's kind of a given. But you know, when you think about, you know, these kids, and even at the end of the game, like there was no chance we were going to win the game. There's like 26 seconds left, because unfortunately I do think some of the clock management down the stretch was not so good. I mean, I don't know what we were doing with some of the timeouts and some of the play calling. I mean, maybe we got to spike the ball or something, but we let a lot of precious seconds roll off that clock.
Look, Chesney and Kennedy, this is an open invite. We can come over, play some college football 25, some Madden. We can work on our late game clock management strategy. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, because some of that was very, very questionable, not so good. But the players never quit. Like, they never gave up. They were trying to score with like 10 seconds left when we needed 2 scores. And I just love the never say die attitude. And so I do think that's going to play well for us down the stretch, especially when you mention some of those games that we have got to win. And again, if we can get that swagger back, AB3, here's what I need you to do, my guy. I need you to get off social media. No social media. I need you to go Rocky Balboa, before he goes to face Ivan Drago in Rocky 4, go into the meat market room and punch some steaks and train and just get like super locked in for the remainder of this season. All right. Don't listen to this podcast. Don't listen to anything I've said tonight, please. Don't listen to anybody on social media. Don't read any comments. Tunnel vision, play your game. Dude, you were a Heisman Trophy candidate about 3 weeks ago. That's the guy that we need to run this program. And you got it. Like, he's got it. All right. So again, I'm very excited to see how he comes back out. Of course, we got Southern Miss coming in. As you said earlier, they just fired their head coach, Will Hall. Yeah, just fired him this week.
Bye.
Right? I mean, there were heads rolling in the G5 this week. Of course, our good friend Mike Houston down at East Carolina finally got fired. He's been a huge underachiever down in Greenville since he got there, right? So not surprising to see that he got fired. Was that a surprise to you?
No, not at all.
No, I mean, what is the record this year? What, 3-5 or 3?
The record doesn't matter. You let Charlotte put up 55 on you or whatever Charlotte did to you. That right there, you should have been fired on the tarmac.
Yeah, that'll get you fired. But Will Hall fired. I think Will Hall is a pretty talented offensive mind. But 3 years down in Hattiesburg and has not gotten it done in the house that Brett Favre built. And I don't know if you've seen their facilities. Have you watched any Southern Miss film?
I've watched a little bit of it. Do you know the background of that, though?
I do not.
He is involved in, and he's very quick to sue. So I'll be saying allegedly a lot here. Allegedly funneled taxpayer money and used fraudulent funds to boost Southern Miss's athletic facilities. So he would do like different Ponzi schemes essentially and get a bunch of people to give money to him, which he was saying was going one place. And then he'd give these huge gifts to Southern Miss. A little questionable of old Brett, what he was doing with some of that money.
Yeah. All right. So I did hear about that, obviously. Like, I think that is well documented. Neither here nor there. I have no idea. What I will say is their facilities, whatever he did, the facilities are top notch. I mean, that stadium is a very nice stadium. I think it's about 36,000 seat stadium. It's very uniform. I mean, it looks really, really nice. They just got to put some people in the stadium, right? But really going to be an interesting game for us. They are 1-6. I do believe that they are much more talented than their record reflects. And I think the reality is they've actually been in some games this year. They just haven't gotten it done. They haven't had things go their way. They haven't been able to put together a full 60-minute performance. And so while, again, our heart of hearts, we say that our JMU Dukes are going to come out and perform really well at homecoming in front of a home crowd against a team that's 1-6 that we should beat pretty handily on paper. I think the line opened up. We're a 24-point favorite. We still got to go out on the field and actually execute. So have you watched any film on Southern Miss? What are your thoughts on their program?
They've got a good running game, shockingly, but everything else around their offense just drags it down so much. And their defense has put them into spots where they have to abandon the run quite early and then lean on the pass. Bringing in EPA here. They rank 80th in the nation with a 0.01 EPA per rush. Not a bad.
All right. What does that mean? Break that down again.
Yeah, of course. So if you look just for comparison's sake, JMU has the 33rd ranked at 0.1. But so essentially, if you put a few decimal spots behind the old scoreboard, so say every time that Southern Miss runs the ball, you could look up and say it's a 0-0 game. They run the ball once. If you saw it out 2 decimal spots, all of a sudden it would be 0.01 to 0, which is 80th best in the nation. Just essentially shows that they are working towards scoring. Every time that they run the ball, they are getting closer to the ultimate goal of scoring a football. On the flip side, their passing numbers rank 129th in the nation at negative 0.27. So every time they pass the ball, it is actively hurting their chances to score the football. And that right there, I think, is their biggest issue. They haven't really been able to get a lot out of what Tate Rodemaker, I think, was their transfer quarterback. He didn't
from
really
Florida State, right?
Yeah.
They're big P4 transfer, right?
Yeah,
He's supposed to be automatic, though, I thought.
Is that
not a thing?
Some P4 transfers across some Sunbelt rosters haven't that came across as shade. I didn't mean to be shade at Dylan Morris. He's a fantastic QB too.
No. He's awesome. But I'm just saying,
I
think for us, we all get caught up on big name P4 transfers, and that doesn't necessarily translate to automatic success, right?
Yes. Yeah.
But this kid that they brought in, this Crawford kid, right? So they benched the Florida State transfer, and they brought this Crawford kid in who seems like, sort of a super athletic Lamar Jackson type of performer at the quarterback position. So it looks like against Arkansas State, by the way, they were in that game. Arkansas State supposedly is a pretty good program. Arkansas State is 4-3 this season. We do not play them. But at one point late in the second quarter, this score was 28-21. I mean, it's a pretty close game going into the fourth quarter. It was, largely a 2-possession game. Arkansas State was up 41-28 at one point. But this Crawford kid comes in, he throws the ball 15 times, almost 200 yards passing, and then he runs the ball 26 times for 87 yards and 2 touchdowns. So I think for us on offense or on defense, we're going to have our hands full with this Crawford kid. And I'm telling you, they got an interim head coach now because their head coach just got fired, and they're going to go out and they're going to let it hang loose. They have nothing to lose.
Yeah, it does scare me, that interim coach effect, whether it's at the NFL level or whether it's at the college football level. From a betting perspective, the team typically covers. Like the interim coach effect, that first week back, the team typically comes to play and does some things you don't necessarily expect them to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to have our hands full against this team. I don't think it's going to be a cakewalk. I hope I'm wrong. I hope we go out and Ball State these guys, but I don't know that that's going to be the case, especially because on defense, they are pretty effective against the pass. I don't think they've given up 200 yards passing all season. And so I think this will be a really good test for AB3 and our receiving core and our running back room. I mean, we got to get all of our weapons firing. The one thing I didn't say is last week against Georgia Southern, our running backs actually had a pretty good day. Like you said, we averaged almost 5 yards a carry. Our running backs actually ran the ball, I want to say, 20 times for like 93 yards. It's just that AB3 lost 20 yards in sacks. So our rushing numbers don't look great. But if you take AB3 sacks out, I think our running backs had about 93 yards rushing, and we just didn't run the ball enough. I mean, George Pettaway got 13 carries. I think Wayne Knight had 6 carries and had some good yardage. We just don't run the ball, right? So, again, I think this will be a good opportunity for us to really try to execute on offense, do a really good job, and then go into the bye week, which I don't know if you know this, Jack, it comes at a perfect time.
Perfect.
I mean, this bye week is absolutely perfect. And, set up, I think, the trajectory for the rest of the season. So we need a little help now. We need Georgia Southern to slip and fall. We need to take care of our own business. I know the team can't look ahead, but we absolutely can as fans. Any final thoughts on Mississippi State? before we transition to what you're talking about, Willis?
Look, get back to the bread and butter. Don't try to overcomplicate this. If the run's working, run the ball. If the pass is working, pass the ball. Just get an effective offense. I'm not asking for 60 points. I'm asking for 35, an explosive play, maybe one, and just consistency. Consistency. If we don't have another peak, but we don't have another valley for the rest of the season, and we're just riding just a nice hill for the rest of the year, I'm totally fine with that.
Yeah, and just go out and play loose and have fun. I mean, I'm reminded of a time where, my daughter, she's like, 10 or 12, I think. She's playing soccer, little league soccer, and her teammates are laughing with the other team on the field. Now, look at my wife, and I was like, what are they doing? And my wife was like, "Oh, they're just having fun." And I was like, "Fun? Like, what does that even mean?" Right? Winning is fun. So I don't mean go out on the field and clown around and joke and laughing and playing and all that stuff. What I mean is just be loose and play football. That's the fun part. And I just want to see our offense at least get back to just flying around the field, making plays and just having fun. All right, Jack, you know what time it is. I know you say that news or snooze is everybody's favorite segment. What you talking about, Willis, is everybody's
What you talking about? What you talking about? What you talking about? What you talking about, Willis?
All right, so what you talking about, Willis, this week is the entire SEC and their officials in the Georgia and Texas game. Now, I know it seems like I'm picking on officials this year because I already had a what you talking about, Willis, about some officials in the UVA and Virginia Tech and Miami game for that horrendous reversal of a touchdown at the end of that game. But this one might have been worse. And if you watch that Georgia-Texas game, right, they call a pass interference on Texas. And the Texas player actually picks the pass off and runs it down to like the 9-yard line, blah, blah, blah. And the pass interference negates the interception. And they huddle up, right? The refs huddle up after the Texas fans throw a bunch of bottles and debris on the field, which causes a delay in the game, which allows the referees to huddle up, and they reverse the pass interference. And I'm watching this, and the first thing I say is what, Jack? Pass interference is not a reversible call. You cannot review that, right? But here's the statement that the SEC made. With 3 minutes and 12 seconds to play in the third quarter of the Georgia at Texas game. So ultimately, I guess they got it right. But once you made the call, it is not reviewable. And he didn't huddle up with the other refs immediately. He only huddled up once the game had to be delayed because the Texas fans were throwing bottles on the field.
And there was no penalty for the throwing of bottles on the field. Like,
yeah,
there's so many layers. Okay, if you're going to reverse the call, well, then I expect you to then give a 15-yard delay of game unsportsmanlike conduct to the fans, which is a thing that they do because sometimes marching bands get hit with it when they play past the snap. I mean, there's so many things that was wrong with this. Refs suck.
Yeah, that was bad though. And Texas of course goes and scores, and now it's a one-score game, right? It's a one-possession ball game. It's 23-15. That was a big play. And dude, if they had won that game, I think the University of Texas got fined $250,000 for the fans throwing those water bottles on the field. If they have won that game, that would have been a fine. I'll take that fine all day long.
Yeah, it's an easy fine.
$250? What? Yeah, that was crazy. What you talking about, Willis? SEC? That was terrible. All right, let's take it to the house, man. It's kind of late. So, Jack, it's homecoming weekend in the Berg, which of course is an opportunity for JMU alums to make an annual pilgrimage to the Shenandoah Valley to be swallowed up by nostalgia, storytelling, and just overall reliving of the glory days. It's also a time when the old heads, the old folks like me, will drive around campus in Harrisonburg in general and play a game called That Used to Be. Like when they drive to what's now known as the Tequila Taco Bar on South Main Street and say, that used to be a spot called JM's. If you know about JM's, if you know, right? Or you stroll down Evelyn Byrd Ave and say, you see that shopping center? That used to be a spot called High Lawn Pavilion. Yeah, it was owned by one of my teammates. It was owned by one of my teammates while he was on the team. Man, the 90s were a special time. For my wife and I, it's an opportunity to take our kids to Godwin Hall, where we met on August 24th, 1996, and tell them the story as if they've never actually heard it before. Now, as a player, I was always excited about homecoming because I always knew we'd have a great and energized crowd. And our team was always fired up about the opportunity to put a great show for what would likely be the best crowd of the season. As an alum, though, it's an opportunity to meet up in the Berg with a bunch of peeps that I probably hadn't seen since last homecoming, but have exchanged hundreds of group chat messages, memes, and maybe a few off-color jokes. Now, remember, what happens in group chat stays in group chat, right, Jack? But as it relates to football alums, specifically, it's an opportunity to rekindle the brotherhood, to once again pay homage to one another, our on-field accomplishments and defeats, and our mutual love of everything JMU football. As we embark on this year's homecoming, though, I started thinking about how the transfer portal and the new landscape of college football has disrupted this time-honored tradition. Because as you look across college football, many players, after they are done, will be asking themselves, where is home? If you're Cam Ward, let's say, is home Incarnate Word? Is it Washington State? Is it Miami? If you're Jordan McLeod, is home South Florida? Is it Arizona? Is it JMU? Or is it Texas State? These are but a few examples of guys who have transferred multiple times during their college careers. And without me getting on my soapbox about how the portal and NIL are ruining college football, we'll have plenty more weeks for me to dial that one up. I'd like to just take a second to acknowledge how extraordinary it was to see our very own Cole Potts play his 50th game in a JMU uniform. 50 games. And hopefully he'll have at least 7 more. And he did it as one of the best offensive linemen in the conference. So he's undoubtedly had some offers and opportunities to leave the Berg. Most certainly, there was an offer to go to Bloomington, Indiana, at the very least. But when he was asked about this summer, about what it meant to him to be a leader on this team, here's what he said.
Well, this is my 5th year. I'm a Duke. I'm a diehard Duke. I will be forever, and I want people to know that, and I want my team to know the standard that it is when it comes to being a Duke. Like, you got to live up to the expectations of our fans. We're not a low-standard team. We're not a 500 team. We're a championship team, and I want everyone to know that, and I want everyone to practice like that, play like that, and just live the standard of what we are.
I'm a Duke, a diehard Duke, and I will be forever. With the way college football is going, I don't know that we'll ever see another JMU player do what Cole has done, to sacrifice the short term for the long term and ultimately be able to always refer to JMU as home. All right, JMU Nation, we have taken it to the house. Thank you for once again tuning in. The Dukes are going to get back on track. I hope to see you guys in Harrisonburg. Again, I'll be in the booth with Curt Dudley for the ESPN Plus broadcast. So excited about that. Jack, are you excited about this game coming up? And again, you do such a great job at this. Tell the people how they can find and follow To The House and the JMU Sports News Network.
Yeah, I'm pumped for homecoming. This should be an awesome week. Keep in touch. Keep along with, I don't even know what the word is, with everything happening with JMU Sports News Network. Just hit the subscribe button wherever you are currently listening. Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, hit the subscribe. We would really be appreciative if you gave us a 5-star review as well. Maybe write a little review. We're not asking for too much. You can just hit the 5-star. That goes a long way, and we appreciate that wherever you are listening. And you can subscribe to the JMU Sports News Network right here on YouTube. Be sure to hit subscribe and leave a comment as well if you're watching over on our YouTube. And you can follow along with To The House at JMU To The House on Twitter and Instagram.
Dope. Well done. Are you going to be in the Berg, Jack?
No, I'm this might be sacrilegious to say after that fantastic To the House commentary. I like to make my own homecoming because I'm a cheap guy, and then the hotels skyrocket in price. I don't love crowds too much. I like making my own homecoming.
Go on, Jack. All right. Well, at least you'll be wearing purple. Dukes get back on track. Let's take it to the house, Jack. Go Dukes.
To the House is part of the JMU Sports News Network. New episodes of To the House with JMU Hall of Famer Delvin Joyce drop every Monday, and episodes of the JMU Sports News podcast drop in the middle of every week. Subscribe to the JMU Sports News Network wherever you find your podcast and never miss an episode. You can watch every episode of To the House on the JMU Sports News YouTube. Stay updated on social at JMU Sports News and at JMU To the House, and at our website, jmusportsnews.com.